Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. Tonight I wanted to talk about the COVID Delta variant that's now in 49 states in the United States. This is taking the virus one step further down, making another problem because it combines a virus and a fungus. And there are various other diseases out in the world that do the same thing. One of them is Panama disease, where an entire cultivar back in around World War I was wiped out, and the bananas that we have today are not the same as were before. They had to come up with a whole new strain cultivar of the bananas. There are none left of the other one that I know of. The bee colony collapse disorder combines a virus and a fungus. I live in a part of Oregon where there is a sudden oak death, and there's a new strain of that out now right in our area here along the southern Oregon coast. And there's the one with pickles, cucumber pickles, and the other one is this one now with the COVID-19. I'm not aware of any other ones, but when you have two of them together, you're looking at a thought form that is equated ideas that brings a virus into manifest it. It's a thought form that's manifested into the physical. And the fungus is fungi usually like warm, dark places, moist places, food, for example, and that's too warm or too it's not, and it's moist. And when they get like a bruise from their harvesting, then they get the virus or the fungus. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about what we can do about it. I talked about the fungus or the virus as being a thought form that's manifested into the physical, based on fear, based on darkness. You could say this is like a battle between light and darkness. And so now what we need to do is, instead of acting out of fear, acting out of anger, lashing out, what we have to do is start functioning based on light. Light is also a thought form that's manifested into the physical. Light is a substance that when you put a thought form into it, it creates matter, but darkness kind of does the same thing too, but it's a very low frequency idea. So when we're thinking about creating something, the idea to overcome this is to not let the snakes interfere with your life. Basically, if you're equating people and snakes and seeing only the darkness and the corruption and the misunderstandings that are turning out to, like the shootings and all the stuff like that, if you focus on that, what happens is that you're seeing the darkness, and it's basically becomes fatal when it prevents you from getting your life. So what you want to do to overcome this is to start to function in the light and to use thought forms to create by intent rather than by default. Now let me explain that. Default is when you create out of fear, you create out of revenge, anger, but light is when you are solving a problem. Let's say that you have a crisis and you know how to solve it. You see like a dark cloud on the horizon and you have a solution for it. that addresses the root cause of the problem. You have to understand what the root cause of the problem is. And a lot of times working people have to solve problems all the time, so we know what the root cause of the problem is a lot of times. Not always. If a doctor, for example, is using, I'm going to make people very uncomfortable here for a minute, but if you are a doctor that's using chemotherapy on somebody with cancer, that isn't necessarily addressing the root cause of the problem, because, like I said, thought forms matter, or thought forms, light is a thought form that's manifested into the physical, and it creates matter. So if you have a fear that's causing problems, how do you solve that? Causing cancer, how do you solve that? It isn't necessarily the chemotherapy or the crutch that's solving the problems. It's that you need to solve the problem that's associated with it. So right now, what we have with this COVID Delta idea is that we have to start solving the problems that are the root cause of this problem. So what I'm doing is I've been working on my books, and not necessary to plug them, but the idea that we have a solution to it. And the difference between heaven and hell is that there's a solution to your problem. If you have cancer and the doctor tells you it's terminal, you don't necessarily just want a dozen roses or a flower bouquet or something like that. What you want is a solution to your problems. So that's where we are now, is we have to start understanding that when we see a problem, we offer the solution to it. The YouTube is great for doing that, giving us the opportunity to have a voice. And even if it's something like trying to figure out what to have for dinner when the potatoes are all kind of full of fungus, how do you deal with fungus in food? I've been watching to find out, what kind of crutches that you can use. Not saying the crutches are bad, but you still have to face the root cause of the problem to solve the cancer, and you still have to deal with the fungus and get the vaccine, but understand the vaccine is not going to deal with the fungus. So what I'm going to tell you is that things have a certain environment. Everything has a certain environment. There's a certain continuum of frequency that we live in. And if we live in an environment that is full of darkness, full of fear, full of anxiety, full of wondering if you can survive, if you lost your job, how are you going to survive? What can you do? So what I'm going to just suggest that what you do is to realize there is a solution to your problem, and start considering what you can do based on your talents and gifts that God gave you, your Creator gave you, your talents and gifts. And then what will happen is you were born with your purpose in life, and I'm going to sound like Oprah Winfrey for a few minutes here. Follow your purpose in life. Start to understand that the things that have happened to you don't necessarily have to prevent you from getting your life. Because what people do is they go for a period of time thinking that they are getting their life, and then they realize they're not. They go into the abyss. Like, it's not working. We're watching Donald Trump right now go through his terrible circumstances. He lost the election, and he can't figure out what to do about getting in again, and he's trying so hard, and people are kind of walking away from him, and it's difficult for him. So he went along thinking he was getting his life, and now all of a sudden he's not. And now he has to figure out how far down he's going to go. And like being an alcoholic, you go along thinking the alcohol is not a problem, and then it becomes a problem. You lose your family, you lose your job maybe, you can't pay the mortgage, you lose your house, you lose your kids, and then what you have to do is figure out how low you're going to go, and then turn around and figure out how to climb out of it again, just like a 12-step program. So that's where we are now, is if you can understand that if you can create a fungus by being in an environment that is full of fear and anxiety, anger, all the negative things in the world, turn it around and see what you can do to create something that you like. If you don't like where you are, change it. And that's basically, I have been working on a series of books. I was a dental hygienist for 27 years, and I got tired of doing the same things over and over again. I loved my patients. I loved the job that I did, but I was ready for a change, and I kind of sabotaged myself. And then what happened is all of a sudden I was squeezed out of my job, and I ended up with no job. I had my book. I had just channeled a book, and I was thinking that I was going to be able to get it published, and I had a new life ahead of me. Then it took a long time for it to happen. I just got hit with all sorts of resistance to the plan. And when you understand the planning process, the first step is called the Fool. It's based on, and I'll talk about the planning process. You're like a fool, like the tarot card. The number 0 card is the Fool, and going along thinking that what you're doing is working, and you're in heaven, and you can't see that there's this big huge abyss right in front of you. And that's why you go from the abyss, you create a plan, and then all of a sudden you're hit with the resistance to your plan, because people don't like the idea of your threatening their security and support. Well, we didn't have any security and support. I had to start to work my way out of the abyss, and I finally have accomplished a great deal in this period of time that I've had since then, climbing out of the abyss. There were some very difficult days, but now things are getting better. And I have the experience behind me to know that it's possible to climb out of the abyss. And anybody can do that too if I can do that. Okay. So, figure out what you want to create. If you make it based on your talents and gifts, which came to you from God, the best thing you can do is start to stand on the principles of universal law. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. For world peace to come, everybody had to be exposed to universal law. So that is the first step. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's what I did when I was in my darkest time. For me now, the light is getting better. I'm seeing more light all the time and more sense of creativity. But it's very difficult to do that when you have all sorts of problems around you. There's a solution to every problem, and somebody has a solution and somebody has a problem. And the trick is for people to find each other. And that's the tough part, is finding the person who has what you need and you have what they need, and you create a win-win agreement. I work out of my warehouse here. I rent a warehouse, and down the alley here, there was an elderly man, and he who had a storefront, and he had to take his garbage out every day, so I would go and help him do that, and we got to be friends. It was making a win-win agreement, because I was in a situation where I needed to get out, I needed to walk, and I needed to think, and having other people around who were having problems just taking their garbage out, I felt so it was a good positive experience for me. So I met my best friends, right, that we make win-win agreements, and that's basically how we're all getting out of our crisis. A win-win agreement is where you share what's easy to share, and you get back 10 times, 100 times, and 1,000 times what you give. Because what it does is it's like this is based on the Fibonacci numbers. Leonardo da Fibonacci, an Italian mathematician, kind of came to the understanding. I don't know if discovered it is the right word, but he realized that nature was based on the idea of making win-win agreements. It's not dog eat dog, it's making win-win agreements. And once you do that, it builds trust and sets the stage for future agreements. So when you make a win-win agreement, then that other person, and you give what's easy to give. It's not a sacrifice. It's not a compromise. A win-win agreement is when you do what's in everyone's best interest, and you share what's easy to share, but you get back 100 times, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times what you give. An example of this was I had my book. I had channeled A Manual for Peace, and I needed to get it edited. I had some money, some tax money, a refund that had come back, and I had some money, and I thought, okay, I can treat this like seeds, and I'm going to get it published, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to sell it, and then I'm going to make enough money to print some more, and then I'll do some more and get them. And then, so I asked a man to help me do it. And for him, it was easy to edit. He had been an editor of a trade journal, and he was elderly, and he was sick, and he was lonely for his wife. And so my daughter and I went to stay with him for a little while he edited my book. And I didn't know how to repay him for his kindness. And I was thinking, what can I do to repay him? I don't have any money. You know, it was $1,000. It would cost me $1,000 to have him edit it. And he did it, and what I did was I channeled his wife. For me, it was easy to channel. For him, it meant a great deal to have his wife back, to know that she was okay. And for me, it was very difficult to do the editing. I didn't know how to do it, how to prepare my book for printing, and instead we made a win-win agreement. Then when he went into the hospital, he was sick, and he went into the hospital, and my daughter and I took care of his cat while he was gone. He felt okay with that because my daughter loves animals, and she's an animal person. And so we had a place to stay, and which benefited us. We would have had to pay hundreds of dollars a month to do that. We didn't have it. And he had somebody there to take care of his cat in his house, and it benefited him to do that. So each time, what it does is it builds trust and sets the stage for future agreements. That's what it did. It went on 2 more times. We have had 2 more win-win agreements that have come from that, and it's amazing how it just keeps on going and going and going. You're not limited at all to what you can create when you make win-win agreements. So while you might not have any money coming in, it's like me at that time, it's possible for you to do the same thing. Just find out what it is, and just only what's easy to share. You're not giving any money. You're using your talents and gifts, which are easy to share and benefits you to share, and then getting something that you need. And isn't that a really nice way to function? It's coming up with plans and functioning in the light and knowing that you have everything you need. Somebody has a solution to your problem, and you just have to find out who that is. Okay? So that's all I wanted to talk about tonight. The darkness is something that's just based on fear. It's an illusion. We live in it's called the illusion. The third dimension is called the illusion. So we're making a paradigm shift from the third dimension to the fourth dimension to the fifth. It's like learning how to function based on the Fibonacci numbers. So every time you make that paradigm shift, you are actually adding, the spiral shape is actually based on the Fibonacci numbers. So look into that and find out how that works, how the flower of life pattern works. I have my books, but I can only sell them at this time to independent members, and basically they're all out there trying to figure out how to create their life. Okay, so I ask you to like, share, and subscribe, and most of all, share this information with your family and friends, because this is something that is important. It's important for people to understand. Okay, so that's all for tonight.